Finally, there is a new drama in the StarCraft 2 community. Recently, a big topic blew up on Reddit and people are discussing smurfing and especially smurfing for content on YouTube. Today I'll talk about that, and I'll share my own story of how I was smurfed by uThermal and what I think about smurfing in general. First of all, what is smurfing? Smurfing is when you deliberately decrease your MMR to play with lower skill opponents to harvest easy wins. If your MMR gets too high, you just quit dozens of games and keep on crushing noobs. This is a really big problem for most online games because new players get irritated and they eventually leave playing that game. If you somehow missed the whole argument, let me make a summary for you. There are quite a few StarCraft 2 content creators who do funny challenges. For example, like the notorious planetary rush into Grandmaster series by uThermal. In this series, uThermal starts from a much lower MMR than his main account and plays against much worse players, but he's only allowed to play in a certain way, in this case, start with a planetary rush no matter what happens in the game. There are also zealous to Grandmaster only series by Mana, and Peak also did something like that in the past with Bronze to Grandmaster series. And BeastQT was actually among the first content creators who made that popular. So the whole thread started 5 days ago, when a user named BNS18GS opened this discussion with his message. In short, he thinks that smurfing is bad in general, and making the content of it only makes it worse. It ruins the ladder experience for many players and encourages others to smurf too. Of course, there are two sides of this story. It's pretty much a grey moral zone. Obviously, smurfing is morally wrong and a bad thing to do on the whole, but when it comes to content creation and certain limitations, there is something to speak about. And let me start with positive sides. The good part about smurfing for content is obviously the content itself. Such challenges bring a lot of attention to the content creator, and they also make StarCraft 2 more attractive and interesting for viewers. People get into the game, start enjoying it more, and such videos and challenges also attract a lot of new players and viewers to StarCraft 2, which is crucial for a game that's rarely been updated with new content or even being promoted by the developers themselves. So, such actions are actually quite helpful for the whole community. Some people also argue that being outplayed by uThermal or any other pro player is actually an honor and it's a valuable memory. Usually, they'll also be given free advice and find themselves on YouTube, and that's what many people genuinely like. And again, as a content creator, you must attract attention and entertain people. Any guy on YouTube is striving for getting more subscribers and inviting more people to watch their content regularly. Of course, for a number of reasons. And since YouTube is a very competitive scene, you have to stand out and catch that attention. And that's the sole reason why content creators try to attract you by new formats or at least by thumbnails and titles. Take my content for example. I'm genuinely interested in growing the StarCraft 2 community and making it bigger. And my goal is to attract both players who are active now and those who left the game years ago and don't really care about it anymore. And from my experience, more clickbaity titles and slightly exaggerated thumbnails give you a triple or even quadruple viewership count. Check out this match-fixing scandal video. Many people complained about the title, and of course the game is not dead and the Korean scene still has tournaments like GSL, but you get the point instantly when you see the title. The consequences of the match-fixing were disastrous, and that's not an exaggeration. The Korean scene shrinked after that scandal, it was a really huge blow. And of course I'm a bit sorry that the title triggers some people, but it also engaged a lot more StarCraft 2 players in discussions and sparked a new wave of interest in its history. And on the contrary, my best video with a rather boring title didn't do well at all in comparison. And now let's talk about the counterpoints. Is it really okay to make other people lose games for the sake of entertainment? Well, not everybody enjoys losing in general, even if it's a pro player against them. It's really a self-explanatory thing, but there's one point that people very rarely mention when they discuss smurfing. I feel like this is a really complicated thing to explain, but I'll try my best. When you are playing StarCraft 2 at a relatively high level like Master League, you usually make assumptions about your opponents when you're only loading into the game. And these assumptions about the skill level affect the way you play the match and your attitude towards it. For example, I have around 5.8k MMR on the European ladder. And when I face somebody who has a lot less MMR than I do, for example, it's a 5k Protoss, I start playing differently than how I would play against somebody of my level. Because the thing is, I'm 100% sure that I'm much better, or at least I'm more experienced than this certain player in the long run. So I most likely would be able to outplay him in a macro game if we get to that stage. However, since cheeses and all-ins are fairly easy to execute, I'm a bit afraid that I can lose to a cannon rush or proxy gates or something like that. So my goal becomes surviving till that stage of the game where I am dominant, and this means I should play it safer than I would normally do. On the contrary, if I get matched against Showtime or Hero Marine, I need to cut corners, be greedy and try to do something out of the box, because I know that there is a very tiny chance that I can win a proper macro game against somebody like Showtime. He has all the advantages, the speed, the experience, the multitasking and just whatnot against me. So the best way for me to win would be playing incredibly risky or just doing something unpredictable. I can skip scouting, I can drone more hoping he won't notice and etc. So I'm trying to create every possible advantage over him, even if it's a bit illogical or if it's risky to do. Now of course there will be people who say that the ladder is just a place to train, it doesn't matter, etc. But it's not the case for all people. Some players play to win, and they don't care whether they do it in a correct way or not. Of course you're supposed to scout, use your logic and react to what your opponent does, but it's not always the best thing to do, because your attention in the game is limited and you need to prioritize more important things. So I hope you grasp my point. If not, please ask me in the comments, I'll give you a better explanation then. And what happens when you face Smurfing players? Your expectations of their level don't meet the reality. And not only does it affect your mental state, you get angry or sad, but it also affects the way you play. Because if you knew that you were playing against Mana, for example, you would be doing things in a different way. You would be trying to impress him, play better, be more creative and so on. So pretty much the same happened with me and uThermal. I faced him on the ladder and he was like 600 MMR below me. So I thought that I would go for a quick roach push because it usually works well against such players and I never do that stuff against much better players. It's not because I'm cocky, it's just that my microcontrol sucks and I know I'll lose with that strategy against the best European Terrans. So uThermal was doing Ghost only challenge and he managed to defend well. After seeing this bizarre strategy of a 5k player, I was doing a lot of risky moves and my playstyle was adjusting to match the skill of my opponent. Had I known I was playing against uThermal, I would have played a lot more differently. I felt really upset about losing to that strategy, mainly because I didn't know it was uThermal and I felt really bad about that. Well, imagine you're losing to a much worse player who is also doing something totally bad and something that makes little sense. I just started doubting myself. The feeling I got from that day is that I suck at StarCraft 2 and I should take a break from the game. Or maybe this game is just not for me anymore. And then I learned that I played against uThermal and my attitude changed completely. I was now happy about that and it was a nice challenge. And now you probably see the main problem with Smurfing. It's not even the loss itself, it's the wrong expectations. This is the reason why I also hate barcodes and why I really dislike playing against people who use them. It gives them an upper hand because, especially in Grandmaster League, I don't know who I'm playing against and they know who I am. And therefore they have some expectations and can counter my stuff a bit better. And this is the most annoying case for example, cannon rushers, because nobody would play normal if they knew that this certain player got into Grandmaster only because he's playing cannon rushing all the time. You would just try to adapt as soon as possible, you wouldn't waste your time with a standard opener, right? A lot of people make the assumption that if a content creator is playing a Diamond or a Master League player, then it's just okay and these people should adapt, they should have their knowledge, experience and it's not gonna be a problem. But well, the difference between any Grandmaster player and the Diamond player is the same as the difference between me and Cyril. I am a Grandmaster player and I have been around top 50 on the European ladder for years, but Cyril is still 10 times better, and even if he limits himself with some rules like not using certain units, this is still a very unfair match. So, to sum up, unless you know you're playing against a content creator or like any kind of famous person, it's gonna be a ruined experience for you. But if you know that you are playing against somebody who is doing a challenge, the element of surprise is ruined, and that's obviously not great for the content. And this is a dilemma that is really hard to solve. In my opinion, smurfing for content is still okay, and it's still better for the community overall. People like uThermal do a great job of entertaining people and helping the StarCraft 2 community stay alive and kicking. But at the same time, I do really feel sorry for those who felt bad after losing. And that's why I think maybe playing less exciting challenges around your MMR, or at least in Grandmaster League, is a better way of doing such content. That's actually what Custom and Peak do. But it's only my opinion, and I gotta admit, I really enjoy uThermal's content, and watching him crushing worse players is my guilty pleasure. So, what do you think about that and what's your stance on smurfing? Share your opinion in the comments, have a nice day, and see you next time.